Hello, this is Noreen Crone-Findlay from Crone-Findlay.com and TottyTalksCrafts.com. This video is all about weaving two tiny little, teeny wee, darling little teddy bears using the Hello Looms. This is the baby duo from Hello Looms. And you end up with absolutely charming little bears. This one is the Blue Bear of Happiness, and it's woven on the larger of the two baby duo looms. The kit comes with two looms that you press out, and the Blue Bear of Happiness is woven on the larger size, and the little brown bear is woven on the smaller of the two baby looms. And now I'm going to show you all the things that you need to have to weave your teeny tiny teddy bears. I just want to show you one more thing first before I edit away to that. This is I always call them adenoids, but no, it's Altoids tin that I've turned into a bed for the smallest little bear. And the pillow I wove using the smallest of the baby looms. I wove two pieces, stuffed them, and sewed them together. And the blanket is also two pieces woven on the teeny tiny loom and then sewn together. And the wee little bear just fits in it so sweetly. And you can have a little traveling bed for your bear. If you want to close the lid, the little bear has to come down with its head off the pillow, and then you can tuck it in your pocket. The slightly larger Blue Bear of Happiness fits into dollhouse furniture quite nicely. Okay, now I'm going to just put together all the things that you do need to weave the bears. To weave the two little bears, you'll need, this is the Baby Duo kit from Hello Looms, and it comes with the two looms, the slightly larger one. This is about the size of a business card. It is, where's my tape measure? One of the other things you will need, of course, while weaving is a tape measure or ruler. Okay, so the biggest one is 3.5 by 2 inches. The smaller one is 2.5 by just 1.5. Now the Baby Duo kit comes with 4. They're not shuttles because they don't. You can't actually use them as a shuttle, but they have now one of them. There it is. One of them. Here's a little surprise secret, is one of them comes with a weaving needle, an extra weaving needle inside. And I do use them to wrap extra yarn on for when I'm taking my my little looms on the go for weaving. And I will, speaking of which, things that are so handy to have are I use different pencil cases for carrying all the bits and pieces that I do take with me when I'm weaving. One of the things I always take with me is a pencil and a notebook for making notes about the weaving. Here's another pencil case that I use for carrying the looms. The yarns that I use are things like embroidery floss or sock yarn or DMC weaving yarn. Things that are thin are really useful. This is a bag full of, like, there's some baby yarn in there. These are all yarns that I got at various thrift stores. They came from, I think, probably, I don't know, 100 yards, 100 yarns, 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 100 needlepoint kits or cross stitch or something. But anyhow, it's wool, and it's I'm trying to remember the maker of it. Anyhow, it's very thin and works great on the tiny looms. Now, you, as I mentioned, you need the looms. You need a tape measure. The bears need beads for eyes, and these are, I think they're called E-beads. They're glass. I also use a selection of other craft needles for weaving. I tend to use the wooden needle that comes with the kit as a shed stick. I also really like to have, I have this nice little sliding box, and if you can lay hands on a small box for holding your extra needles, and you'll also, it's handy to have along safety pins as well, because I find that I do tend to misplace needles, and so having needles along with me is very handy in a box. A small crochet hook, about 1.75 millimeters, is a really good choice. You'll also need some stuffing for the bears, and and some black, I think I have a skein of it in here. Yeah, some black embroidery floss for doing their little noses and mouths. And I also really like to put hearts on the teddy bears, and so I have a paper punch that I punch out the hearts. So did I mention scissors? You need scissors too. So having a little pair of scissors that can fit in your traveling weaving box is extremely handy. So that's what you need, and hopefully I've mentioned everything. If not, then it will come up in the video. All right, let's get started. Oh yes, I did mention shed sticks. This is just a toothpick that works quite nicely as a shed stick. So anything small, like the wooden needles that come with the kit, I like that as a shed stick. Plastic craft needle works well as a shed stick as well. The shed stick is going to save you lots of time with your weaving. Now the larger loom I have warped up already for weaving the larger teddy bear. This is really thin sock yarn, and so I used 2 strands of it held together to warp this loom. Now you warp this loom in exactly the same way that I'm going to show you how to warp the little one. I'm going to just move down towards the table a bit here, and we can start. Now before I go too much farther, I did mention that I had wound yarn onto the little bobbins that come with the, or shuttles that come with the kit. So my yarn will be coming off of those because I had a large ball of yarn, and when I'm out and about I like to have just a small amount with me, and so winding it onto the little shuttles is very handy. Now the teddy bears are both made in exactly the same way. You're going to weave 2 rectangles at the full width of the loom, and then 2 narrow bands. One will become the arms, and I should show you on the little guy because this is what we're doing on this one. One will become the arms and one will become the legs. So we'll start by weaving the rectangle. Now I'm going to, because this yarn is thick enough that it fills the slots, you can check your yarn and see. This yarn fills the slots really nicely. This sock yarn, I needed 2 strands held together. What I do to start is you need extra yarn at both ends of the weaving to finish the rectangle. So I start by taking the yarn through and I lock it up there, and then I just tie that just to hold that in place. Just once is enough. Then I come down to the lower edge through the first slot and then up through the first slot, and you go up and down across the loom. Now, I'm not pulling tightly on the yarn, I'm just doing it evenly. The yarn will be taken up, the warp strands, by the over-under nature of the weft yarn. Oh, this worked out perfectly. Now, I've taken this last bit through the lower notch here. Now, if I hadn't run out there, I would have snipped there. But anyhow, I'm going to just take this in to that notch on the upper left-hand side, and then I'm going to push my yarn through to the back, and I will take it under that back bit. Again, just because I want to keep it out of the way while I'm weaving. So the loom is now warped for the first rectangle. So now I'm going to cut myself off a length of the same yarn. You could use a contrasting yarn to this if you preferred. It's totally up to you. So now what I'm going to do is just thread. Oh, no, excuse me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the shed stick, which is the little needle that came with the loom. I'm going to go under, over, under, over, under, over, and under and over. Then I push the shed stick up out of the way. This keeps one shed open for me all the time, and so it means that I now have got, I don't have to be picking up every single row. When I'm weaving, I will have like coming from the left to the right, because my left is my non-dominant hand. That row is already picked up for me. So I'm going to fold the end of the yarn over, push the fold through, and my needle is now threaded. So I'm going to pull my end down a bit. There we go. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to weave row 1. The loom is woven with 2 rows. Row 1, I will go over the first strand, under the second, and over and under across to the left-hand side from the right-hand side. I'll bring the yarn through, and I'm going to lock that end into the little lock notch at the lower edge. Now I take my little weaving comb and I press the weaving right down to the bottom of the loom. My second row is from the left to the right, and I just slip my needle in the shed under the shed stick, and voila, that row is woven in a blink. Now I'm holding this bit of the weft yarn, I'm pinching it to that side warp strand, and I'm leaving the that's a bit exaggerated. You come in at an angle, and then you start your beating or your pressing in at this side for this row, and press it in. Make sure that would be a bit loopy. So then I press it in, and you see what I do? I tuck my comb in and I hold it in the palm of my hand. Now row 3 is the same as row 1. I pick up and I go over the ones I went under in the previous row and under the ones I went over in the previous row. And I will now ease it through, and oops, this yarn I find tends to be kind of snaggedy. Okay, and I'm going to kind of pull these out, and because I've got my little comb just tucked into the palm of my hand, I don't have to be always picking it up off the table. There we go, and I've just pressed it into place, tuck it back into my hand. You just get so used to it being there, you don't even think about it. And then row 4, because it's an even row, goes up and through, so that row is instant. And again, I pinch it to hold it so that I'm not pulling in. I don't want to hourglass. I want the sides to be even. Even though it's a tiny loom, it still is a loom, and you are doing real weaving. So there we go. And I am now going to continue rows 1 and 2, or 3 and 4, up to the top of the loom. When I get up too close to here, then I will take my shed stick out. But for now, weaving up to there, I'll leave that shed stick in. So I'll come back when I've woven up to the top of the loom. Now that I'm at the top of the loom, the wooden needle slash shed stick is too thick, so I've slipped a metal darning needle in there instead. And these corners where the extra yarn is held on, that gets in the way of the weaving too. So I've untied that knot, and I just take those down to the bottom of the loom so that I'm not getting all snarled up in them. Snarled up does not equal happy weaving. So take those down, and they are now out of my way. Yay! So pretty soon I'm going to have to pull this. I'm trying to squeak one more row in before I have to take the needle out. Yeah, that needle's just not, that's got to go. There we go. Yeah, sometimes I try and, go, oh, well, it's easier if I do it that way. No, I'm making my life more difficult. So, okay, so ease that through. And then, because I'm right-handed, it's easier for me to just spin the loom to, although I'm pretty ambidextrous. Oh, one thing I do usually is I slide the shed stick under the finished weaving and then bring it up, and that will actually lift those threads up a bit and make it easier to weave the last few rows. So turn that around now. Okay, and ease that in. Nudge it into place. There we go. And I could squeak one more row in, so I'm going to just, but because it's at the very top there, I'm going to do it just a couple of stitches at a time. There we go. And under there. Now I will lift the shed stick out and I will untie that from here. Let's go a bit larger here. And now I'm going to take and use the weaving comb to just flick at that a bit, and that's not doing it this time. Sometimes it does. So I'll use a needle to flick those stitches off the pegs. And the upper edge just lifts off. Now I need to see how it's quite loopy there. So I need to go over and under at least one more time. Going over the ones I went under and under the ones I went over. And we'll see if that is good enough. Oh, I think one more row would be good. So I've just turned it here. And again, I'm going to go under the ones I went over and over the ones I went under, just to fill that last bit of weaving in. Fill those gaps. There we go. Okay, that's fine now. And I need to do the same thing down at the lower edge of the loom. I'm going to just move those ends out of the way, and I will thread up. So I lay the yarn over the needle, fold it, push it through the loop. And now I'm going to go over the ones I went under and under the ones I went over, just to fill that last row of weaving in. Oops, I want this guy to go through that loop that the weft strand made. Grab it. This is when having a crochet hook close at hand is handy. Okay, and that is just fine. So that is now the I just had to pause while an idiot drove by way too fast. There are children on this street, mister. Anyhow, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to now weave. So we now have the head and the body of the bear, and I'm now going to warp up and weave the second narrow band. Grab my strand of yarn, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a loop. Now I emptied my other little shuttle, so I'm going to have to take it off the ball here, and I'll use two strands held together. Just need to wind this back onto the outside edge. So I'm taking one strand off of the little shuttle and one strand off of the ball. I could have taken one strand from the middle of the ball and one strand from the outside, but I have the little shuttle here anyhow. So I'm going to leave oh gosh, that's probably a good 4 inches. And let's make that 5 inches. Okay, and now I'm going to make the letter P. So I've made a loop with that going. See how I'm folding so that the yarn off the ball comes up the back. I fold the loop over and I pull that through. Now I'm going to pull out my my slip knot that I've just formed, and I want it to be long enough that it'll go up to the top edge, and it's a bit long, so I need to just pull up on that to snug it in. So I'm just snugging and making sure that that knot, open that up with my thumbnail and make sure that that is on the loom. There we go. It is on the loom. Excellent. Yeah, so I'm going to just hold that and I'm going to pull on the yarn from the ball just to tighten that slip knot up a bit. Now I'm going to, oh, and I just popped it off. Ugh, really? Okay, so before I cut my end off here, I'm going to lock one of the warp strands here and here so that they don't go popping off on me again, and the other warp strand here and here. That'll keep them behaving nicely and out of mischief. Okay, so now there, that's firm. And now what I'll do is I'm going to cut at least 24 inches, 60 centimeters, and snip it off. Move that to the back. And now I will thread, so I fold over, and I think for this one I'll use a slightly larger needle, so I'm going to fold it over the eye and then push that loop through. And now what I do is where's the little one? Just want to open up, so I'm going over 2 of the strands and under 2 of the strands here, or over, and that just gives me a gap between them. So what I'm going to do is go just following through so that I am, oops, I need my ends to be there, and I'll pull my yarn up there. Okay, so I'm going into the center, and I do that from both one side and then the other, and I'm pulling up, and this is how I form that narrow band. Oops, you know what? I did the previous one just weaving with one set of strands, so I need to mention that to you. For the arms, just do your weaving with one set of strands, like one strand of yarn in your needle. For the legs, which is what this is, you use 2. So, sorry, I should have mentioned that. Okay, so back to these. Just, it's very quick, it's very easy, and you do pull up quite firmly so that okay, that's getting in the way now. And so I'm just kind of holding the strands open so I can, with my middle finger at the back there, so I can snug those in. Okay, I'm going to just work to the top of the loom and I'll be right back.